The crisp autumn air of a quiet Saturday morning did little to cool the simmering resentment in Officer Frank Briggs. He'd been passed over for promotion again, a slight he attributed not to his own abrasive conduct and string of minor complaints, but to the department's pandering to political correctness. His patrol car crawled through the streets of a historically black neighborhood, his eyes scanning for any perceived infraction, any opportunity to assert the authority he felt was constantly undermined. On the corner of Elm and 3rd, Arthur Hayes, a man of 72 years, stood patiently at a bus stop. His posture, though slightly stooped with age, held an undeniable dignity. A worn but clean tweed jacket covered his thin frame, and a simple flat cap rested on his silver hair. He carried a small, canvas grocery bag with a few items from the local market. Arthur was a widower, a retired history teacher, and, though he rarely spoke of it, a Bronze Star recipient from his service in the Korean War. He was on his way to visit his granddaughter. Officer Briggs's patrol car glided to a halt directly in front of Arthur. The officer emerged slowly, his hand resting on his holstered weapon, his expression a mask of bored contempt. "Well, now. What have we got here?" Briggs drawled, his voice loud enough to make a woman across the street hurry her children along. "Just hanging out, are we, old man? Waiting for your connection?" Arthur met the officer's gaze calmly. "Good morning, officer. I'm waiting for the number 12 bus." "These are the stories that built the number 12, huh? This is King of Briggs Tales." Walked a slow circle around Arthur, looking him up and down. "You look a little out of place for this time of day. You got some ID on you?" "I don't believe I'm required to show ID for waiting at a public bus stop, officer," Arthur replied, his voice polite but firm. He knew his rights, though experience had taught him that knowing them and having them respected were two very different things when dealing with certain types of law enforcement. Briggs's eyes narrowed. "Oh, a lawyer now, are we? Think you're smart? Let me tell you something, Pops, I decide who's suspicious around here. And you, standing here all shifty-eyed, you fit the bill." He jabbed a thick finger towards Arthur. "Now, I'm asking you again, nicely this time, before I make it not nice, ID. Now." Sighing softly, Arthur reached into his jacket pocket and produced his wallet. He handed over his driver's license and his veteran's identification card. Briggs snatched them. He glanced at the driver's license, then lingered on the VA card, a sneer forming. "Arthur Hayes. Veteran. So you're one of those, huh? Think that card gives you a free pass to do whatever you want?" He tapped the card against his palm. "What war was that, Grandpa? The big one where you boys supposedly saved the world, only to come back and expect handouts?" His tone was laced with a venom that went beyond simple disrespect. "I served in Korea, officer," Arthur said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "And we didn't expect handouts. We expected the respect due to any citizen of this country, especially one who served it." "Respect?" Briggs laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You people always crying about respect. Respect is earned. And from where I'm standing, you haven't earned a damn thing." He threw the cards back at Arthur's chest. They fluttered to the sidewalk. As Arthur bent slowly to retrieve them, his old knee protesting, Briggs continued his tirade. "Fact is, I've had reports of an old fella matching your description, bothering people around here. Selling things he shouldn't. Maybe some of that, imported, stuff from your old war buddies, huh?" "That's a lie, officer, and you know it," Arthur said, straightening up, his eyes flashing with indignation. "I've done nothing wrong. That's for me to decide." Briggs barked. He suddenly grabbed Arthur's canvas grocery bag, yanking it from his grasp. Apples and a small carton of milk spilled onto the sidewalk. "What's in here, huh? Let's see what contraband old Grandpa Hayes is peddling today." He rummaged through it roughly, finding only a library book and a half-eaten sandwich. He threw the bag down in disgust. "Clean. This time." Tears of frustration and humiliation welled in Arthur's eyes, but he blinked them back fiercely. You have no right. I have every right. Briggs stepped closer, invading Arthur's personal space, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. I'm the law here. And you, old man, are a nobody. Less than nobody. Just another piece of urban decay I have to deal with. He poked Arthur hard in the shoulder. Now, I'm feeling generous. I'm going to let you go with a warning. But if I see your face around here again today, looking suspicious, I'm running you in. Understand? Arthur stood his ground, his body trembling slightly but his gaze unwavering. My son will hear about this, officer. He will hear about how you treat the citizens you're sworn to protect. Briggs threw his head back and laughed. Your son? Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. What's he gonna do? Write a letter to the editor? Get out of here, old man, before I change my mind and find a reason to cuff you just for the fun of it. He gave Arthur another shove, harder this time, sending the elderly veteran stumbling back against the brick wall of the adjacent building. Arthur cried out as his already sore knee buckled, and he slid down the wall, landing heavily on the sidewalk amidst his spilled groceries. Briggs watched him for a moment, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. He then spat on the ground near Arthur's feet, turned, and swaggered back to his patrol car, whistling a tuneless melody. He got in and drove off slowly, looking in his rearview mirror to make sure Arthur wasn't getting up too quickly. Arthur lay there for a long moment, the cold of the concrete seeping into his bones, the bitter taste of injustice in his mouth. Passers-by hurried past, some casting sympathetic but fearful glances, none daring to stop and help while a police car was still in view. With a monumental effort, he pushed himself up, his body screaming in protest. He gathered his spilled groceries, his dignity battered but not broken. Then, with trembling fingers, he pulled out his old, reliable cell phone. He scrolled to a number marked simply, David. It rang only once before it was answered by a calm, strong voice. Dad? You okay? You sound out of breath. David, Arthur said, his voice raspy with emotion and pain. I need you, son. There was an officer. Briggs. Badge number 714. He roughed me up pretty bad. Corner of Elm and 3rd. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by a silence that was more dangerous than any shout. Dad, David's voice came back, now devoid of its earlier warmth, replaced by a chillingly controlled fury. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone else. I'm on my way. And Officer Briggs. Officer Briggs is about to learn that some actions have consequences he can't even begin to imagine. He's about to understand what it means to pick on the wrong family. Arthur closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on his cheek. He knew that tone in David's voice. It was the sound of an avalanche starting, small and distant at first, but building to an unstoppable, all-consuming force. Justice was coming for Officer Frank Briggs. And it would, indeed, change everything. Officer Frank Briggs, blissfully ignorant of the storm gathering in his name, had found a quiet spot a few blocks from Elm and 3rd to enjoy a lukewarm coffee and a day-old donut. He was scrolling through his phone, a smug satisfaction still warming him from his encounter with Arthur Hayes. He'd shown the old man who was boss. That's how you handled these types, quick, firm, put them in their place. Arthur, meanwhile, sat heavily on the bus stop bench, the spilled groceries a painful reminder of the morning's ugliness. His hip throbbed, and a dull ache was spreading from his shoulder where he'd hit the wall. But more than the physical pain, it was the familiar sting of humiliation, the weary resignation that this was a battle he'd fought his whole life, in and out of uniform. He clutched his old phone, David's promise echoing in his ears. He knew his son. David didn't make idle threats. It wasn't long before a sleek, dark gray sedan, an Audi A8 that looked conspicuously out of place in this neighborhood, turned the corner onto Elm Street. It moved with a quiet urgency, parking smoothly a few feet from the bus stop. David Washington emerged from the driver's side. He was in his late 30s, tall and powerfully built, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that bespoke success and an unshakable confidence. His expression, as he saw his father, was a tightly controlled mask of concern, but his eyes held a glacial fury. "Dad," David said, his voice low and resonant as he knelt beside Arthur, gently examining his father's scraped hands and the pained lines around his eyes. "Are you hurt badly? Did he put his hands on you beyond the shove?" Arthur shook his head, though his wince told a different story. "He pushed me down, son. Knocked the wind out of me. My hip, it's not good. But it's the way he spoke, David. The hate in his eyes. Like I wasn't even human to him." David's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "He called you names? Racist epithets?" "Enough that I knew what he was about," Arthur said grimly. "Badge number 714. Officer Frank Briggs." He was proud of it. David helped his father carefully to his feet. "I'm taking you to get checked out at the clinic right after this. But first, Officer Briggs and I need to have a conversation." He settled Arthur gently into the plush passenger seat of the Audi, then took out his own phone. He made 2 brief calls. The first was to a name that would have sent shivers down the spine of anyone in city government, a renowned civil rights litigator. The second was to a direct line at the police commissioner's office, a contact cultivated through years of high-level advocacy and community work. His conversations were short, precise, and chillingly effective. He gave Briggs' name, badge number, and a concise summary of the unprovoked assault and racist abuse. He mentioned his father's military service and the current physical state Arthur was in. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. The steel in his tone was enough. "He's still in the vicinity, Dad?" David asked, ending his calls. Arthur nodded. "Last I saw, he was heading towards Miller's diner, probably for his break." "Good," David said, his expression grim. "Let's not keep him waiting." They found Officer Briggs's patrol car parked outside Miller's diner a few blocks away. Briggs was just stepping out, stretching, clearly in no hurry. David pulled the Audi up directly behind the patrol car, blocking it in. He got out, Arthur remaining in the car, watching. "Officer Frank Briggs?" David's voice was calm, but it cut through the morning air with an edge that made Briggs turn, an annoyed expression on his face. "Yeah, that's me. What do you want?" Briggs's eyes raked over David's expensive suit and car with a mixture of suspicion and resentment. "You lost, pal. This ain't your usual stomping ground." "Actually, officer, I'm right where I need to be," David said, stopping a respectful but firm distance away. "My name is David Washington. A little while ago, you encountered my father, Arthur Hayes, at a bus stop on Elm 3rd. You may remember him, an elderly, decorated Korean War veteran whom you chose to racially profile, verbally abuse, illegally search, and physically assault." Briggs's face, initially showing confusion, began to register a flicker of recognition, quickly followed by his default arrogance. "Oh, that old troublemaker. So you're his kid, huh? Come to stick up for Daddy?" He chuckled. He was disturbing the peace, being belligerent. "I handled it by the book. You got a problem with that, you can file a complaint. Now, if you'll excuse me," he made to walk past David. David didn't move. "By the book, officer? Is it by the book to use racial slurs? To throw a man's VA card in his face and mock his service? To physically assault a 72-year-old citizen without provocation, causing him injury? Because that's what multiple eyewitness accounts, which my investigators are currently canvassing, are likely to confirm. Not to mention, I trust, your own body cam and dashcam footage, which my legal team has already formally requested be preserved immediately, along with a litigation hold notice for all your communications today." The mention of investigators and legal team wiped the smirk off Briggs's face. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm the man who just got off the phone with Commissioner Stevens' chief of staff, Officer Briggs," David replied, his voice dropping to an icy calm. "And before that, with Eleanor Vance at Vance, Holloway and Stern, they'll be representing my father in the multi-million-dollar civil rights lawsuit we'll be filing against you personally, and against this city for failure to properly train and supervise its officers. They handled the Jefferson settlement last year. You might remember how that ended for the officers involved." Briggs's complexion turned a pasty gray. The Jefferson settlement had been a massive payout, and the officers involved had not only lost their jobs but were facing federal charges. "This entire interaction, officer," David continued, subtly indicating his own phone, "is also being recorded. Every word you say. Now, I believe your sergeant, a Captain Miller actually, is already en route. It seems the commissioner's office takes reports of unprovoked, racially motivated assaults by its officers on decorated war veterans rather seriously." As if on cue, two police cruisers, sirens suddenly blaring as they rounded the corner, screeched to a halt nearby. A stern-faced captain got out of the first, followed by two internal affairs detectives from the second. The captain, a man named Peterson, strode directly towards them, his eyes fixed on Briggs with palpable anger. "Briggs! What in God's name did you do this time?" He then saw David and his expression shifted to one of weary recognition. "Mr. Washington. I received a call. My sincerest apologies on behalf of the department for any distress caused to your father." Briggs looked utterly bewildered, then terrified, as he saw the IA detectives approaching him. "Captain, it's a misunderstanding. This old man, he was waiting for a bus, Frank," Captain Peterson said, his voice like gravel. "And you, it seems, decided to play judge, jury, and assailant. Internal affairs, gentlemen, will take it from here. Briggs, you're on restricted duty, effective immediately. Hand over your weapon and your badge." Officer Frank Briggs, who minutes before had been the swaggering embodiment of unchecked power, now stood deflated, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning ruin. He fumbled with his belt, his hands shaking as he unholstered his weapon and unclipped his badge, the symbols of his authority now symbols of his disgrace. The IA detectives Mirandized him on the spot, informing him he was being detained for questioning regarding serious allegations. David watched, his expression unyielding, until Briggs was placed in the back of one of the cruisers. He then walked back to his father, who had tears silently tracing paths down his weathered cheeks. "It's over, Dad," David said gently, opening the car door. "Or at least, this part is." Arthur grasped his son's hand. You always knew how to fight, David. Even when I thought I'd forgotten how." "I learned from the best, Dad," David said, a rare, soft smile touching his lips. "Now, let's get you to that clinic. And then, we make sure that justice changes everything isn't just a headline. We make it a reality, for you, and for everyone else Officer Briggs ever thought he could trample on." As they drove away, leaving behind the flashing lights and the shattered career of a racist cop, Arthur Hayes felt a profound sense of peace mixed with the pain. His son had not just defended him, he had restored a piece of his broken honor, and in doing so, had indeed begun to change everything.